title of the sermon, Groundhog Day, and I think you are familiar with a movie of similar title. Let me just get an indication if you know, if you watched it, just, okay. I think about 90% at least. Bill Murray and his crew, TV crew, being trapped, or Bill specifically being trapped in perpetual sameness, waking up and the day doesn't get over. You wake up, it's the same day. Same things happening, nothing new, can't get out of the time warp. Same experiences. Everything stays the same. That was more or less my feeling, my psychological state after the shooting in Vegas. I said to myself, yeah, this is Groundhog Day. It's been a little more than a year since Orlando, when the previous record was set for a lone gunman and the number killed by that lone gunman on one occasion. Were there more involved? I can't remember now. So in Las Vegas, a new record set with people killed and people wounded. So I think wounded is an apt term in the warlike situation that prevailed there. What was different this time, though, was that it wasn't close-up killing. It was sort of more clinical from about 1,700 yards, is what I read. And the effective kill rate of the kind of weapon, the AR-15, is more or less 2,000 yards. It'll kill somebody at a greater distance, but 2,000 yards is more or less, you can say, all right, I'll be certain my target, if it's a living thing, size of a human, will probably not survive the shot. What was also new, I think, was the aftermarket adaptation to the weapons that changed it from semi-automatic to automatic. And that increased the rate of fire significantly. I think even if it wasn't adapted with a number of weapons available and all the magazines that I could just see on a few pictures, a few photographs of the hotel room, that even without the adaptation of the so-called bump stock, there would have been a massacre in any case. Interestingly enough, this is not the biggest massacres in the history of the USA. And I'm not talking about civil war or mass slaughtering of Native Americans or something like that. Just in our recent past, there were, as late as 1921, the Tulsa massacre, where I read 300 African Americans were killed, also involving gunfire. But that was not one individual with an AR-15 or more deadly weapons. And I qualified my few thoughts with, I will speak reluctantly, because on the one hand, I feel speaking about it is becoming part of the knee-jerk rituals that we have developed as a society for such instances. A mass shooting occurs, there's a bit of news filtering out, you can find it on the websites normally, and then the barrage of news coverage, 24-hour cycles, like Groundhog Day, continues for the next week. 4 months. We develop these rituals of a lot of prayers and thoughts being expressed and sent. We have these rituals of vigils being held. We have the same tired arguments being paraded again, from both sides or from all sides. And a lot of long, sad faces of mainly politicians on the TV. And then the next best thing comes to town again. And we wait for the next shooting, which will happen. And then we go through the same rituals again, and preachers, delivering moving sermons about the dead and the wounded, etc. And we are in mourning for a while. While $1 billion free marketing exposure being given to unscrupulous manufacturers, and the blood money being poured into the politicians will ensure that there will be another opportunity to go through this like Groundhog Day. Excuse me for sounding like the philosopher in Ecclesiastes. The same stuff will happen again. There's nothing new under the sun. That more or less expresses how I felt when I heard about the shooting. And it's not skepticism and coldness directed at the victims. Bodies being torn apart, lives being torn apart and changed forever. And the lucky ones are the ones that are killed, because they don't have to live with the misery. It's the strangest thing for me that as sensitive viewers and Americans, we are protected from seeing up close what an AR-15, an assault rifle, does to blood and flesh. And I don't understand it, that we are so sensitive that we need to be protected from that, but we do not experience the same sensitivity when it comes to the laws that can prevent something like that. Or perhaps the same sensitivity is present with campaign contributions that will ensure that laws are not changed. The second passage that we listen to from the book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah, who was a prophet whose aversion to the temple and the temple cult and the elites in Jerusalem came over many generations because his ancestors were banished. They were priests, but they were banished from the temple because they spoke truth to power. And they were living in a village, a hamlet close to Jerusalem. They could see the city, knowing the temple is there, but we are not allowed as professional religious people to be there. We're banished from it for speaking the truth. So Jeremiah does not mince his words when he speaks about Jerusalem and the king and the temple. And he speaks about moral decay. And he says, you are comforted, you people in Jerusalem, by the words, the Lord's temple, the Lord's temple, the Lord's temple. But that does not mean anything. That does not guarantee anything for you. That is a false assurance. And I often listen to the aftermath, this ritual that we go through as a nation with a mass killing, the mass murder through the gun. where we are also very religious. And we investigate it from every angle, and we speak about the prayers and thoughts and the blessings of God on America. It made me think about these words from Jeremiah. The Lord's temple, the Lord's temple, the Lord's temple. We even investigate the mental health of every individual involved. But I think we better start investigating the decay of the moral courage of our nation. In this time, when it is difficult to find two Americans agreeing on anything, the remarkable thing is 94% of Americans agree on such common sense changing of the laws to make background checks universal. 94% of people agree on that. That's a good poll, a good polling company that revealed that. 94% of us agree on that. And I don't understand, this is our nation, this is our country, this is our people being murdered for the profit, for the almighty dollar that we bow to, and we let the politicians get away with it, no matter which party you are part of, that you subscribe to. It is time to stand up and say, enough is enough. We agree on common sense reform so that the law of the nation, the country, protects us. In this war that we have declared on ourselves, this justification that we write every time so that the slaughter can continue and some people can get re-elected and others can make millions and perhaps even billions. So now you understand why I said I'd speak reluctantly. Because I do not want to rub salt into the wounds. And I really do not want to sound like somebody that says, I've had enough. I don't want to hear about it, just get out of my sight. I'm almost there. When it comes to this stupidity, the sinfulness, I want to call it, of justified slaughter of the innocents, as Jeremiah say, spilling innocent blood. When are we going to come to our senses? Do we want to wait until it is close up, that it is us involved, or our children, or our parents, or our friends, or our grandchildren? Or when will we say, let us as Americans, and especially us as Christians, take that common ground that we have, where we agree on common sense reforms, and enforce that, because we have the power to do that. We just have to exercise it. I think I made the statement repeatedly now, nothing has changed, and I'm wrong. It's not a correct statement. Here locally, after the Orlando shooting, which was on, I think, June the 9th last year, something happened here. A group was formed called Hugs in our community, emanating from our church in cooperation with people who felt similarly, had the same sentiments and convictions in the community, mainly from the Catholic Church. And these people are not what we often referred to as tree huggers, you know, and totally deranged, bleeding heart types. I've observed and I've been part of the activities, and I think they're playing an excellent role in educating people. For instance, making people aware that there is great danger for the state of Massachusetts, where our gun laws are, I think, good, and where we have the lowest death rate in the nation, per capita, I think. Where there is great danger indeed, because on federal level, with laws being passed, Massachusetts may be drawn down to the lowest common denominator for gun laws, which will change our situation significantly, etc., etc. They are disseminating information. And at least they are holding a vigil to remember those that were killed. So for me, there is hope, there is something happening, there is a candle flickering in the darkness that tend to overwhelm me when I look at the slaughtering of the innocents, the massacres that are sanctioned through inaction, through profit. So let us as God's people take each other's hands and lock arms and say, for the sake of God's love, as followers of Jesus, we will work together. So that not the certain interpretation of the Second Amendment of the Constitution is the higher priority, but the second of the great commands that Jesus said is on par with the first great commandment, love for God and love for neighbor. Let us embrace each other. Let us make the great commandment the highest priority. And let us at least be willing to talk to each other in a sensible, respectful way. Because the soul of our nation, I think, is at stake in this. So much rides on how we respond this time and from now on. It need not be Groundhog Day. The future can be one of hope and of light and of people embracing each other, embracing the ideal of not being ruled by fear, but walking in the light of God's Word and God's love. May we be part of that movement and do what we need to do. Amen.